Welcome to another episode of Gov Tech Today. I'm Russell Lowery.
And I'm Jen Saha.
And together we're going to try and bridge the gap between .com and .gov. Teeing up today, we're going to talk about cybersecurity. Top of mind, buzzy kind of word throughout the tech industry. Where does California stand today on the issue of cybersecurity?
Obviously a huge priority, I think, in California and nationally. So the National Association of State CIOs does a survey every single year of what state CIO priorities are. And this year, again, 10 years running now, cybersecurity is number one as far as a priority for state CIOs. And that includes California for sure.
So 10 years in a row, this has been the top issue. When I think of cybersecurity, I most of what I'm familiar with is from the headlines. So you saw like ransomware attacks or the city of Oakland losing services. What do we mean by cybersecurity? If it's been on the top 10 list for 10 years in a row, and we're all familiar with different products, why is it still a concern? And what do we mean when we put some meat on that bone? What is the cybersecurity?
It's a rapidly evolving area of technology. And so I think that necessitates keeping it a top priority just to sort of stay ahead of the curve. And government, as per usual, government's a little bit behind where the private sector is on this, and the bad actors out there take advantage of that. I mean, we look at even just ransomware. There was a study recently that ranked ransomware by state and local governments as far as being a rate of ransomware attacks. It increased from 58% to 69% year over year. And this is concerning, but it's also
58 to 69% that had been subject to a ransomware attack.
Right.
So almost 70% of state government entities have been subject. Someone tried to gain control of their system. And there was some action that was required to prevent that from happening. I'm just trying to make sure I understood your.
What's the most concerning to me is that cross-sector, so you look at the private sector, this rate has stayed pretty stable over the last few years, meaning, all right, we're seeing that this isn't a huge opportunity if I'm a bad actor, a ransomware hacker, but it's increasing in state and local governments, meaning they're taking advantage of some type of opportunity there. So it's super concerning because, I mean, these types of hacks, this type of cybersecurity breach can take down a system. I mean, we've experienced them at our own state government. And, you don't want to, every government employee's goal is to keep themselves off of the front page of the paper, right? It's like the LA Times test. It's like, could this land me in the LA Times? If it could, I better not do it. And cybersecurity, I do not envy our state CISO or CISOs at any of these departments or agencies and governments because it's so rapidly evolving that there is no way to say we are 100% protected from cybersecurity threats. It's just too rapid.
So is there a cybersecurity framework for the entire state, county, local, or is it each CISO by agency or department is sort of coming up with their own plan?
So there is at the state level a California Cybersecurity Integration Center. It's called CALSIC. This brings together our Office of Emergency Services, our state technology department. We have a CISO at the state level. It also brings together military department, California Highway Patrol. So you have all the players at the table from a cross-sector of agencies that really give a ton of training, organization. They have a cybersecurity information center, a SOC, a state operations center, by contract. So it's like SOC as a service that they offer to departments and agencies that aren't maybe big enough or sophisticated enough to have their own. So it is a central resource. It's also the central agency that's charged with making sure all the departments comply with what the state rules are. We have a cybersecurity plan. So it's called CalSecure. It's a 5-year plan. It's rapidly changing as is necessary in this industry. But it really lays out where departments should be within the next 5 years. It's everything from you will implement zero trust. You will have encryption on data. So there's step-by-step guides in there that every department and agency needs to comply with, and they'll be audited on it. They do a ton of audits out of the Information Security Office. So coming to the table with how are you keeping up with CalSecure and what do you need to get there? 90% of the time it's funding, right? That's the big gap. We would be as secure as possible if we had unlimited dollars, but we don't always. So it's what level of investment is going to be needed in order to help you comply with this plan that you statutorily have to comply with.
So agency by agency, they're doing that. And then, so if I'm a state information security officer at an agency, I'm required to, and I'm using what budget I've got for all of my tech needs. It doesn't matter what agency you're understaffed. You don't have all the personnel resources that you've got. You've got programmatic implementation that you're trying to do, and all the tech needs to provide services to the state and all the stakeholders in that process. Does the security get shoved to the back, or is that a priority for the CISO and the programmatic is secondary, or is it both? How's that navigated by a?
Unfortunately, it's not a priority until it's an emergency.
Oh no!
Right, and so we saw a ton of funding for information security in this last budget. So even when we're strapped, there are allocations for staff, for contracts, for secure systems and software. Just in this recent budget, I think I totaled them up, and there were, like, specifically in the budget, 20 individual department allocations for cybersecurity, which is great. It's finally seeing and getting the money that it needs. But what it took to pass most of those were like a failed audit or a breach or some type of hack or, some type of ransomware attack that we don't see behind the scenes because it's all secure. But ultimately, that's really what drives a focus on these things is something went wrong, and now we have to fix it. And we need the staff today in order to fix it or to get us into compliance with CalSecure or to fix this finding in an audit. So until it hits the fan, it isn't a super big priority. But once it hits the fan, it's like get them what they need to make sure this doesn't happen again. As I've
had conversations with tech people involved at both the city and the state level, I hear if you're in charge of the system, you believe it's safe, or they're saying it's safe, and then they're always asking for more to make it safer. And I wonder if the people who are selling the state-of-the-art technology in the private sector, what I hear from them is nobody is safe. There are breaches, and it's hard to explain to somebody who's done their very best job to make it as safe as possible that you need an independent assessment of that security vulnerability to even know and get a report about what's safe. But does that same report that says you're unsafe reflect poorly on the CIO?
Sure.
And so, and then they're maybe the person in the organization that's best qualified to know that, but they also have an incentive to declare themselves safe. So
yeah,
how's the state navigate that?
There's definitely, look, if I'm a vendor and I'm selling you something, of course I'm going to tell you it's safe. Like, is anything 100% bulletproof safe? No.
Right.
It's just not. And we see that all the time whenever you hear about a breach in a system. These are big name companies that the state absolutely has contracts with. So it's like, okay, what was breached? Was it anything that touches a state government department? you probably have the same fears. Whenever I read about something, it's like, number one, are they a client of mine?
Right.
Please no.
Please no.
And number two, did it impact any of the accounts that we work on with our clients, which are like government accounts? And again, it's please no, Lord help me here.
Right.
But, vulnerabilities are going to happen. I think one of the biggest weaknesses that almost everyone acknowledges is like the human factor in it, right? You can train the brightest minds in the industry on don't click that link. Right? Don't open that email, but it's gonna happen. Like mistakes happen. I was at a cybersecurity conference a few weeks ago, and it was a city government was talking about the training they've implemented with all of their staff and their IT teams and their city council members. And they were like, city council members are absolutely the worst at this. Like they will always click that link. And it's like, great, of course. Like that's where we're at. But I mean, we get them in the private sector. The public sector is no better, right? Like the technology is the same across the board. So things are going to slip through the cracks. How do you train your employees at the end of the day to not click on it, to like not fall for that phishing email, not click on the link, report it to your IT so it can be blocked in the future? It's undoubtedly going to happen. I mean, I can tell you behind the scenes, some of the breaches that have happened at the state level, that's how it is. Like someone downloads something and all of a sudden your system's down or your budget's wiped out, a couple weeks before it goes public. So it happens at the end of the day. And the human factor in it is something that you can't really control for. You can train the heck out of them. But at the end of the day, we're still vulnerable.
There's technological solutions for scanning for those vulnerabilities. That person clicked the link, nothing appeared to happen. They clicked it again and again and again, and then they got worried, and then they just deleted the email. But they launched.
That door's been opened.
That door's been opened. And how does the CIO and the CISO even know that happened, and the systems in place to identify those vulnerabilities? And in my structure, an ideal structure, it should be going to the CISO, but it also needs to go to agency leadership so they can work with the CISO to make sure something's being addressed. But do we have those robust monitoring systems in place across agencies? Is the CalSecure plan, will that give us that kind of protection?
Yeah, it definitely will, and it requires a partnership with it really requires a partnership with industry, right? The tools are there. They have penetration testing, they have monitoring, they have vulnerability scanning. So it's there from the private sector. It's a matter of, do you have the funding? Have you implemented it? Have you implemented it across the enterprise so that everything is protected and monitored? And then the information sharing is really important. And that's one of the main functions of CalSIC, that Cybersecurity Integration Center, is if one department is experiencing something, you can probably bet that they're trying it at many departments. So how are we sharing information on those vulnerabilities so that we're learning from each other's mistakes in a timely fashion? That's the foundation of CalSIC, is that information sharing about what's happening in this industry at a rapid rate.
Can we talk a little bit about what the bad guys are going for? In a ransomware attack, they're basically, that's pretty obvious. You're going to pay me a fee to get your system back or access to your system back. What else is it that the bad guys are going for? What is the point of, why are they spending so many dollars and resources on this effort to gain access to state systems?
Sure. I mean, the government is the ultimate keeper of our private and personal information, right? The government issues our social security numbers, so you better believe they have access to them, and our driving records and our criminal records. All of that is maintained at our governments. And so, frankly, government is super transparent with a lot of things, but not with that private information. I mean, there are laws on the books to protect that information from being shared. And ultimately, government is the keeper of that. So whenever you're hearing about a breach with a private sector, system, It's what was contained in that breach. Well, it was emails, or it was addresses, or it was personal information like your
Passwords,
credit
credit cards.
scores, your passwords, right? But ultimately, the foundation, our social security numbers, our private identification information is stored at government. So at some level, I don't care if they get my emails. That's, so do the 50 stores that I've ever shopped at. They
Right.
have all of that information. Not a big deal. But that foundational information about who I am is stored at our governments.
And access to that gives value to the criminals, and they can run with that identity theft,
Totally.
credit card theft.
Yep.
They're making money off that data and project, and we're designed to do that. Who do you think should be responsible for ultimately, like if you mentioned 5-year plan for implementing CalSecure, who's ultimately responsible for pushing the gas, tamping the brake? What can we do to accelerate that, to harden and protect our identities?
I mean, the general sort of rule of thumb is that like 10% of your IT investment should be in cybersecurity. And we are not close to that right now at the state level. You look at the money that's spent on technology. I don't know where we're at, but it's definitely not 10%. It's being proactive on this, recognizing it as a priority, funding it before something hits the fan, as opposed to after the fact and trying to clean up a whole mess. And then just the education factors of not just don't click that link, but like protect your data at rest. Let's encrypt it. Let's do that 2-factor, multi-factor authentication. That's where we're going anyway. That's where the private sector is going. That's where when I log onto my bank, I have to use it. So why shouldn't I have to use it too when I'm logging on to something that holds arguably more private information than my bank does?
I like the idea of the data catalog. So the state knows what information you've got and then can set access restrictions on that data, or even get a report of who and when that data has been accessed. So if there's a bad actor in there, maybe from years ago, that you can identify that, and a good catalog can do that. I want to talk about one more thing before we wrap up, but the recovery. If we understand that attacks are going to be a part of our cyber world and life forever, what is the state's plan to recover from an attack? What kinds of, and is that considered part of cybersecurity, or is that a separate category?
I mean, it really is like business continuity, business resiliency. It's all should be in the plan for anyone running a business, and government is a large business. So do you have those redundancies? Is your data stored in more than one place? Do you have a multi-cloud approach so that if one cloud gets hacked or goes down, you have another cloud. Your data's backed up somewhere.
Right. Backup,
recovery should all be a part of anyone's continuity of business plan. And I hope, and I'm hopeful that it is. If it isn't, it will be, because it's required as a part of CalSecure and that overall cybersecurity picture.
If we want to learn more about CalSecure, if any of our listeners want to find out where their products might fit in the CalSecure mix or the state's planning, what's the best way? What are some resources they can go to find out where they fit?
You've really keyed into something that's incredibly important. If you're going to sell a cybersecurity product in the state of California, you should absolutely be mapping it to CalSecure. Beautiful. So that you can say, I know these are the requirements that you, State Department, are faced with meeting. Here's how my product helps you get there, right? How are we as an industry helping you as a government? And that's the key to any type of sales call that you're going to make. What can I do for you, state? And mapping to CalSecure, which is public. They do workshops on it. They're evolving it to meet daily needs. It's all online. It's all available through our State Department of Technology and this CalSIC website. And so we should, as an industry, be reading it, be updating our products, and be updating our marketing materials. We should update our pitch deck to include CalSecure so that we're all talking the same language as to what departments need to do.
Well, that's an encouraging bit of information. There's lots of opportunity out there. I appreciate your guidance and how we can access it, and hopefully the state can get in front of this and be a leader.
Always.